Well, welcome everyone. We're having a few technical problems here, but you are at the Pasadena Village, 1619, the Lingering Imprint. And this is our first presentation under that new title. We've changed the title to make it more relevant to what we really talk about. Today we have Larry Duplechan giving us a presentation about his book, his observations on the world we live in today. And we're looking forward to a very stimulating and interesting program. And without further ado, I'm going to turn this over to Larry. So Larry, take it away. It's all yours. We're live and on screen.
Good morning. Really sorry about the delay. This is my first one of these, and I actually thought coming in 15 minutes early would give me time to work out the technical difficulties, and that was not the case. Just to be clear, everybody can hear me? Nod, wave, something.
I can hear you, Larry, so I'm hearing you.
We can hear you. We're good.
And everybody can see the slideshow that begins 6 degrees of stormy weather? Nodding, yes, waving.
Yep.
Excellent. I don't know how this usually goes, or if there is in fact a usually, but I'm very much open to questions, comments, brickbats, insults. But I think we'll have to figure out exactly how we should do this. I'm not a big fan of hold all your questions till the end because you'll forget your question or it will cease to be relevant or what have you. So I'm told that there are Dick Meyer's assistants or minions or someone who will help me to notice when someone is trying to get attention, because I have a script, I have little buttons to push. I'm going to be very busy, so I probably won't see you if you do in fact raise your hand. So I'll be patient with you if you'll be patient with me. So welcome to 6 Degrees of Stormy Weather, or the pervasive racism of classic Hollywood and how Black artists rose above it and managed to be fabulous anyway. Dick asked me to do this at the behest of Katie Brandon, whom I have known since she was a teenager and who is one of my favorite people in the world. Are you here, Katie?
Great picture. Yes, I'm here.
I have, just by way of explanation, I ganked a photograph off of your husband James's Facebook, and there are literally no photographs of you not holding a glass of wine. So
yes, it's my claim to fame. Thank you.
And you always look great, though, so that's what really matters. I don't know what, if anything, any of you know about me. We'll start with my name, which is Duplechan, Larry Duplechan. It's Creole. If you wanted to know about me, you could have Googled me, and there's a lot of information on there, but you probably didn't. So I will take just a few minutes and let you know who I am and where I'm from. I'm a Los Angeles native. I was born the penultimate day of 1956, so I just turned 67 years old. Both my parents are Louisiana Creole. They were childhood sweethearts, and they moved to California in the mid-50s, as did many other Black people born in the South in the 30s in hopes of a better life, which they did in fact achieve. My father worked for Lockheed Aircraft. He started out of the Army hosing down helicopters and worked his way slowly up. We were used to Dad being the first Negro this and the first Black that and the first African-American something else at Lockheed. And my parents were very, very interested in education. They were big believers in the value of education, and it was understood that I would go to college, which I did. I went to UCLA, which school I chose because they had a gay students union starting in 1974, which was one of the first university gay students unions in the country. which was only 5 years after the Stonewall Uprising. Does anyone not know what the Stonewall Uprising was? Okay, good. I don't have to explain. I got my bachelor's from UCLA and in English Lit, and then proceeded to spend the next several years trying to be a singer. And about 5 or 6 years in, it was obvious that the world was not ready for an obviously gay Black male diva. So I switched and started writing with intent to publish around 1983. My first book was called 8 Days a Week, which was a dude on dude romance novel. And I don't talk about it much because it isn't very good. My second novel, however, called Blackbird, is considered the first Black gay coming out novel of the modern era. And it was the basis for a 2014 film of the same name. There's a whole saga that goes with the making of that movie, but it's in the book. So I will direct you to my latest novel, to my latest memoir, if you're interested in that story. My fifth novel, called Got Till It's Gone, won me the Lambda Literary Award in the Gay Men's Romance category in 2009. But the whole time I was writing these little books, I really wanted to write about pop culture, about movies, about music. And after I retired from my actual career, which was as a legal secretary, I decided that that's what I was going to do, which brings us here. My movie memoir, Movies That Made Me Gay, which came out in October of 2023. Have any of you read it? Okay.
I have.
For the rest of you who have not read Movies That Made Me Gay, first of all, by way of explanation, the title is a joke. It is not to be taken literally. And I say this because I have actually had a few well-meaning souls attempt to explain to me that I was born gay and movies didn't do it. So please be aware, it's a joke, wink, wink. The first chunk of the book is about movies that I watched as a child on television and as a teenager, movies that I feel nurtured my gay sensibility and gave me my sense of humor. The rest of the book is about my personal holiday film festivals, movies I watch every year at certain times of the year for many, many years. And the first annual holiday film festival at my house is always in February for Black History Month. So happy Black History Month, which brings us here. So again, if there are questions, comments, before I really kick off, anybody, anything? Okay. It was fairly recently, probably around the year 2000, that it occurred to me that Black History Month was a good reason to rewatch all Black or Black themed movies. And I tend to celebrate Black show business history month. My parents were, as I've said, they really valued education and they really were into Black history. They had a pretty good Black history library before most people really did. And also because I grew up in the 60s, 70s, at that time, one could watch every TV show that had Black people on it. And that's what we did at my house. My mom would get out the TV guide and she'd announce, we're going to watch Dr. Kildare tonight, Diana Sands is on. Or we're going to watch Mr. Novak tonight, B. Richards is on. And of course, it was the time of the variety show, the Ed Sullivan Show, the Hollywood Palace. And those shows always showcased Black, usually musical talent. I heard a squawk. Anything? Okay. So again, my family would watch any show with Black performers on it. And because of the variety show, I knew the name of just about every working Black actor, singer, dancer through certainly into the 1970s. Everyone from opera singer Leontine Price to the Queen of Gospel, Mahalia Jackson. I remember when in 1964, President Johnson signed the Civil Rights Act. I was 7 years old, and my father painstakingly explained to me what that meant historically and personally. But much more important to me was that same year, Sidney Poitier won the Best Actor Academy Award for Lilies of the Field. And again, I'm 7 years old, and I remember to this day when Anne Bancroft announced Sidney Poitier's name, my mother fell to her knees in front of the sofa, applauding and shouting, "Thank you, Jesus." So I grew up with a love of Black show business, and for my age, an unusual knowledge of Black show business. I first started reading about the subject when I was about 10 or 11 years old. I found in,
So today at the end of my workout, I was doing something amazing. I was doing my full deep relaxation bounce where I'm holding the bar, my eyes are closed, and I'm just completely relaxed.
well, that was interesting.
That was not part of your movie clip?
It was not.
Okay.
Now I'm wondering what it was.
Yeah.
When I was about 10 years old, I stumbled across this book, The Negro in the American Theater, by Edith J.R. Isaacs from 1947. And it was the first book I ever found about Black people in American show business. And I noticed at that time that there were several pictures of this actress, Rose McClendon, who was at the time of the Harlem Renaissance, she was a very famous actor. And I was drawn to her because she looked a good deal like my maternal grandmother. That book also taught me about Ira Aldridge, who was a 19th century Shakespearean actor who was very famous for his Othello. Also, operatic coloratura soprano Cicerietta Jones. Again, late 19th, early 20th century. She was billed as Black Patty after Adelina Patti, who was a very famous white operatic soprano. The gentlemen on the right are Bert Williams and George Walker, who were a very famous vaudeville and Broadway comedy team. W.C. Fields famously called Bert Williams the funniest man I ever knew and the saddest man I ever knew. And that was Black history I decided I could really dig, Black show business history. And I think the history of American show business is a legitimate launching pad for the study of American history of the 20th century, certainly, because starting about 100 years ago, obviously, we have photographs, we have recorded music, and we have movies. And if you watch movies from the 20s, 30s, 40s, it's obvious that even in the fluffiest sort of entertainment, comedies, musicals, movies very much reflect their time, be it Joan Crawford as a flapper, or Ginger Rogers singing "We're in the Money" when in fact it's 1933 and no one is in the money, or Alice Faye singing "No Love, No Nothing" because her man is away fighting in World War II. And sadly, as I'm sure everyone who would come to something like this knows, for Black people, starting when we first got here in the 17th century until, as Chris Rock has said, about 1964, depending on when your town decided to act right, life wasn't great. We were enslaved, we were servants, we were victimized, we were raped, we were lynched. Even on the average, Black Americans were most often degraded, segregated, excluded from mainstream American life. And of course, movies reflected this, because up until the mid-1960s and the rise of Sidney Poitier, Black performers in Hollywood movies were degraded, segregated, excluded, as they generally were off screen. For the purposes of this, I've chosen 1943 as a good starting point, and the singer Lena Horne as an example. 1943 was the US's second full year of participation in World War II. There's a nostalgic myth about the war years as being America pulling together as one to fight the Axis and fight in favor of democracy and freedom. But in fact, in World War II, as you may or may not know, the American armed forces were strictly segregated. Even the blood supplies were strictly segregated by race. Franklin Roosevelt, who was certainly at the time something of a living symbol of freedom, was so hamstrung by Southern Democrats in Congress that he refused to sign a bill into law banning lynching, which was still very much prevalent in the South in the 1940s. But 1943 was a big year for Lena Horne. She was signed by MGM to a long-term contract. She was the biggest Black movie star of her time. But she was also demeaned and segregated and excluded. When she was signed by MGM, they tried to convince her to pass herself off as a Latin bombshell in the Carmen Miranda mold. Can anyone imagine why they would want to do that? Let me hear from you.
Were Latinos more accepted?
That's an interesting point, but no, not so much that. As a Latina, she would have been exotic and cute, like Carmen Miranda. There was the good neighbor policy going at that point. So all things Latin were very popular at that point. But for a Black performer, even a light-skinned Black performer, which obviously Lena Horne was, Black actors, if they weren't playing slaves or servants, were basically, they didn't want to see them in the South. And for musical talent like Lena Horne and others, most often in the South, the song and dance numbers that these performers were in were simply cut out of the film, and no one ever saw them. So it would have been detrimental to her career to be who she was. But she walked in saying, I'm not going to play the maid, and I'm not going to pretend to be something I'm not. And so what happened was, she would come on stage in the movie, as she did in Panama Hattie. She would do a song, and then she'd go.
It was just one of those things, just one of those crazy things, one of those bells that now and then ring, just one of those things. It was just one of those nights, just one of those fabulous flights, a trip to the moon on gossamer wings, just one of those things.
And of course, she was fabulous. She always was. But she just sang 2 songs in Panama Hattie. She had no lines. She had no plot points. She never talked to Ann Sothern and Red Skelton, who were the stars of the movie. And she was then easily cut out of the movie in the South. And that was true of her entire career at MGM, except for Cabin in the Sky, in which she was the female lead. But Cabin in the Sky was an all-black musical. So either you went to see it or you didn't go to see it. It wasn't a matter of, well, here she is and now we're going to cut her out of the movie. After Cabin in the Sky, MGM loaned her to 20th Century Fox for Stormy Weather. Anyone familiar with that movie? Anyone seen it? Stormy Weather is one of my favorite movies, and I actually think it should be shown in high schools as a launching pad for discussions of Black show business in the 19th and 20th centuries. And here's why. The star of the movie is Bill Robinson, the famous tap dancer, Bojangles Robinson. And he plays a tap dancer, oddly enough, from his return from World War I as a member of the band led by James Reese Europe. And it ends as he's doing a show for soldiers going off to World War II. Is anyone familiar with James Reese Europe? James Reese Europe led a band that merged military marches with ragtime. They revolutionized music at that time, and they were the band that went on tour with the very famous dancers Vernon and Irene Castle. They broke down a lot of racial barriers for that time, and they also fought in World War I, and many of them received the French Croix de Guerre for bravery in battle. So he's worth looking up if you're not familiar. Stormy Weather is the reason why I think it would be good in schools is because it really makes for a nice brisk overview of Black show business up to that time. There's a cakewalk. There is jug band music. There is blackface black comedy, which is a touchy subject in the 21st century. But in the 19th, 20th centuries, almost all Black comics worked in blackface. And this team, Miller and Lyles, was for a time very, very popular. And they influenced Abbott and Costello. They had kind of a double talk act. Ada Brown sang blues. Fats Waller sang Ain't Misbehavin'. Lena Horne sang Digga Digga Doo, which there was a whole sort of subgenre of what was called jungle music. Which is another difficult thing for people to deal with. But even when Duke Ellington first started, his music was called jungle music. It was condescending, but it was popular. Catherine Dunham, her famous dance company, did a ballet to the song Stormy Weather. Cab Calloway did his Heidi Ho stuff at the end. And the Nicholas brothers danced what Fred Astaire called the greatest dance tap number ever filmed, called Jump and Jive. And I agree. I think it's amazing. Let me see if we can get that going. This is just the end. what can I say? They were superhuman in my opinion. The title of this, 6 Degrees of Stormy Weather, comes from something that occurred to me back in 2021, that the film Stormy Weather had so much talent in it that, for instance, Viola Davis starred in Ma Rainey's Black Bottom with Glenn Turman, who originated the role of Travis in A Raisin in the Sun, with Sidney Poitier, who later starred in Porgy and Bess with Dorothy Dandridge, who was the first wife of Harold Nicholas of the Nicholas brothers, who starred in Stormy Weather. And yes, sometimes I have too much time on my hands. By way of cultural sidebar, note that the lead male in Stormy Weather is dark-skinned, and the female lead and all the chorus girls are light-skinned, which is a show business tradition that has survived well into the 21st century. Thoughts? Are there, where are my sisters? Where are my Black women in the audience? I'm wondering, am I incorrect or am I correct that the trope of light-skinned Black woman being pretty Black woman is still very much with us?
Yes.
Yes.
Movies, television.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, absolutely no arguments against that, obviously. Another example of this sort of segregation in movies was the Nicholas brothers, who made 12 or 13 movies in the 1930s and 40s and almost never had a line of dialogue to speak. They would come on, they would dance, they'd be wonderful, but that's all they could do. This is the Chattanooga Choo Choo number from Sun Valley Serenade in 1941, and the gorgeous Dorothy Dandridge there in the middle. Down Argentine Way from the movie of the same name. And in film after film after film, they would be in these little standalone numbers that could then be cut out. Anybody know Ball of Fire, 1941, Barbara Stanwyck? Fun movie, one of my favorite movies. I'm not a big Barbara Stanwyck fan, but I really like her in this. And she appears singing along to Martha Tilton's voice with the Gene Krupa Orchestra. Let's do a little bit of that.
Here's the rhythm romping. You see the drummer stomping. Drum boogie, drum boogie. It really is a killer. Drum boogie, drum boogie. The drum boogie woogie. The rhythm motor send you. It's really gonna send you. Drum boogie, drum boogie. It really is a killer. Drum boogie, drum boogie. The drum boogie woogie. You hear the piano romping, boogie, the
I don't know how big your screens are, so it's possible you couldn't see it. but I'm wondering if somebody noticed something unusual about the Gene Krupa Orchestra for 1941. Almost uniquely for that time, Gene Krupa's band had a Black member. Throughout the swing era, there were white bands and there were Black bands, but there were very, very few integrated bands. And Gene Krupa's was one of them. And the trumpeter, Roy Eldridge, is in that clip. But the filmmakers and the censors made it possible for Southern censors to cut him out. He actually takes a solo. He stands. He's in the spotlight and he takes a solo. But what they did was they put that number at the end of the reel. There's a second chorus that they put at the beginning of the following reel, so they could just snip off the end of that reel and not have to see Roy Eldridge. It was just another way of getting around having to deal with Black people in movies. Krupa was Benny Goodman's drummer before he started his own group. And Benny Goodman, do I have to explain who Benny Goodman was?
Mhm.
Anybody not know Benny Goodman? Okay. Goodman, as early as 1935, began working with Black musicians in public, which was huge at that time. He was told it would kill his career, which it very much did not. He first started playing with Teddy Wilson, the pianist, later brought on Lionel Hampton, and then much later, the electric guitarist Charlie Christian. Apparently, this did not go unnoticed. Lionel Hampton, late in his life, told the story of when someone came up to Benny Goodman within Lionel's hearing and began berating him for having niggers in his orchestra. And according to Lionel Hampton, Benny Goodman offered to put his clarinet where the sun didn't shine. So thank you, Benny Goodman. This is one of my anybody got anything to say points. Anybody? Okay, either y'all are shy, I'm just boring you all to death, but I'm going to continue. Often, sorry, aircraft over my house. Often an entire cast of Black performers was gathered for a big production number, either as in an otherwise white film or as a short subject. So I call them mini Stormy Weathers. And one of my favorites of these is called Rufus Jones for President. And it stars the 7-year-old Sammy Davis Jr. Rufus Jones for President is in its entirety posted to YouTube. but it's not for the squeamish. It's steeped in terrible stereotypes. The whole story is supposed to be the dream of this little boy, and of course the big joke is the notion that a black boy could ever grow up to be president in America. Yuck, yuck. And there are things like placards saying 2 pork chops every time you vote, and Rufus is sworn in as president with his hand on the phone book, and he pledges to have the locks removed from all chicken coops and make watermelon free for all. It's a tough slog. But for me, what shines through is this little boy's talent. And I find myself wondering aloud, why was this kid not a huge movie star? Why wasn't he starred with Shirley Temple or starred in a series of musicals of his own? And of course, those questions are rhetorical because we know why. Jam and the Blues is another short subject that's chock full of Black talent. It's also on YouTube. I very much encourage you to find it. It's just basically several great jazz musicians playing some music for about 10 minutes. And it's beautifully shot and it's beautifully played. Lester Young is in it, and Sweets Edison, and Papa Joe Jones, and Marie Bryant, who is one of my favorite not well-known Black performers. She was a singer, a dancer, an actress. She too makes me wonder, why was this person not a major star? Because she could do it all, and she was cute as heck in the bargain.
Grab your coat, get your hat, leave your worries on the doorstep. Just direct your feet to the sunny side of the street. Can't you hear the pick-up patter? The happy tune is your step. Life can be sweet on the sunny side of the street. I used to walk in the shade, kept my blues on parade. But now I'm not afraid, 'cause the rover crossed over. If I never have a cent, be rich like Rockefeller. Got gold dust round my feet on the sunny side of the street.
I love her. Yet another example of how to segregate Black talent in movies was the all-Black production number in an otherwise white movie. This still is from a movie called This Is the Army, and the number is called What the Well-Dressed Man in Harlem Will Wear. The point, of course, is the answer is a uniform, because it was the war years, and it was all about sending men off to war. I found this, I'm trying to think, can I even say, gee, you should see. This Is the Army is not an easy movie to sit through. It's jingoistic. But this particular number is fun for 2 reasons. Joe Louis, the boxer, walks on stage and hits a punching bag in time to the music for a couple of courses for no reason at all, but he looks great. And it's 1943. And at that time, it was unusual for Black men to be referred to as men. So thank you, Irving Berlin, for that. These big all-Black production numbers were mostly in big review movies. Every studio in Hollywood made at least one during the war years to raise the spirits of America, both those in the trenches, both in the war, and also at home waiting for people to come home. Again, it's utterly segregated, but some of them are just really great. And Ice Cold Katie with Hattie McDaniel, very fun. It's in a movie called Thank Your Lucky Stars from Warner's in 1943. The woman on, there she is, that is Madame Sultawan. She had been in movies since their very beginning. She worked with D.W. Griffith. She actually appeared in both Birth of a Nation and Intolerance. So she was Black history herself by 1943. It's a fun number, but again, one can't help but notice that the man is very dark and the pretty girl is almost white. There's Sharp as a Tack, which is Katherine Dunham and Eddie Rochester Anderson, which is from Star Spangled Rhythm. And that is a song about the Zoot Suit. And it's silly and it's fun. And I encourage you to find it and watch it. The rest of the movie is not really worth the bother. But at the end of this song, Katherine Dunham sings, "You're not only classy, you're highly Selassie," which is one of my favorite lines in all of pop music. Brass Buttons and Epaulettes is from a Shirley Temple movie called Just Around the Corner, which is a Shirley Temple movie. You've seen one, you've seen them all. And I like Shirley. And there's something that I've always liked about it, and maybe you'll notice it and maybe you won't, but here it is.
The boys who meet you, the boys who greet you, cream of curbstone cadets with our brass buttons and epaulettes. Let us say good morning beneath your awning. Watch the play that it gets. Brass buttons and epaulettes. But the show get the elegant clothes to wear. So when you uniform it, a New York donor, be sure to see that he gets lots of class, lots of brass, buttons and epaulettes.
Would anyone like to venture a guess as to why I think this number is significant?
I would.
Go.
All of the uniforms are of Black men working in hotels, number one. The audience that you showed was all white. If this was done right after during war times, they didn't want to give any kind of credit to Black men in military uniform. So this was the closest thing that they could do with all the buttons and brass that one would see at that time.
That's really interesting. A couple of things. It's 1938, so we're not in the war yet. And what I found interesting about this number is that close-ups of handsome Black men. None of us is old enough to remember 1938, but as a fan of old movies, I can tell you for a fact that this is unusual. These men are handsome. These men are obviously making an honest dollar. And the close-ups of these guys as they're dancing is very reminiscent of something that Busby Berkeley used to do in the early 30s, which is called the Parade of Faces. For me, it's a celebration of the beauty of Black men that you just didn't see at that time. Granted, they are doormen, they're not doctors, and the lyrics of the song call them the boys who greet you, but one hurdle at a time. Probably the best big Black production number in an all-white movie is called Mr. Beebe. I encourage you to find it on YouTube. It is a cornucopia of Black talent. Is anyone familiar with Lucius Beebe? Anyone know who he was? Lucius Beebe was a writer, photographer, socialite, and dandy, and he was gay, and he was one of those people who almost became famous for being famous. He's name dropped in a Cole Porter song called "I've Still Got My Health." When I give a tea, Lucius Beebe ain't there, and that's who this song is about. And it refers to apparently now in Harlem, nobody's wearing zoot suits anymore. They're all in top hats and tails, and it's super fun. It stars Harold Nicholas. Fayard, his brother, was in the war at this point. The Four Step Brothers, which is an amazing tap dance act. June Richmond, who is a wonderful jazz shouter. Lenny Bluette is one of my favorite Black unknowns, basically. He's like one of those Black actors who's kind of in the corners just about every movie in the 1940s. He's in the Duke Ellington number as one of the dancers in Stormy Weather. And in this number, he's just kind of walks June Richmond in on his arm and is just kind of tall and handsome. And there, Marie Bryant, whom I've told you I'm in love with, dances for about 8 bars with Harold. And it's unfortunately too long for me to share here. So I really think you should see it because it's an amazing array of talent. And it's now almost 11 o'clock. Dick?
We're good
Should
till
I stop here?
11:30.
'Cause I can.
No, we're good till 11:30.
Okay. In my book, and apparently also here, I have repeatedly pointed out the execrable practice of Black people being cut out of big Hollywood movies and being always separated from white performers. And that's just the way it was. But that practice makes the occasional exception, for me, much more satisfying. And 2 of these exceptions involve Dick Powell. I don't know how many of you are familiar with Dick Powell, but he was a singer and actor. And he's shown here with Ruby Keeler, with whom he starred in several Warner Brothers musicals in the early 1930s. He later remade himself as a hard-boiled detective type in film noir like Murder, My Sweet in 1944. And he married Joan Blondell and then June Allison. He's not everybody's cup of tea. My husband can't stand him. But I've always liked him. And his apparent willingness to work with Black artists just makes me like him the more. And he did this in at least 2 movies, 2 that I know of. In Star Spangled Rhythm, he sings a song called Hit the Road to Dreamland with Mary Martin and the incomparable vocal group, the Golden Gate Quartet. Anybody know them? If you don't, YouTube them. The Golden Gate Quartet were, for a time, probably the most popular vocal group in America. They sang gospel and they sang pop. They did both really well. I think they were the first Black acts to be asked to play at the White House. They were extremely popular and they were really wonderful. But probably one of my favorite movie moments, which I really only stumbled upon a couple of years ago, is from a movie called 20 Million Sweethearts, and it is Dick Powell and the Four Mills Brothers. Anything? Anybody? The Mills Brothers, I think, were sublime. Again, look them up. They had an amazing career. They started in the 30s, and I think they finally stopped touring in the 80s, I think, with one original living member or something like that. But they were among the best closed harmony acts in show business. And in 20 Million Sweethearts, the Mills Brothers sing a couple of songs on their own, and then they sing this song, Is My Baby Out for No Good, with Dick Powell.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, I have a real surprise for you. Yes, sir, and I'm afraid you guessed it. It's the Mills Brothers. Baby, what are you out for? Baby, what am I in for? Is my baby out for no good? Is my baby got rhythm? Tell me, is it hot rhythm? Is my baby out for no good? Mr. Moon, why does he wink at every star? In the park, in the dark, why do we park a car? What's an 8 o'clock day for? What do we stay out late for? Is my baby out for no good? 'Cause I could do you good if my baby is out for no good.
Well, you can imagine how this warms my heart. This is 1934, and 4 Black men and a white man sharing a microphone was like a unicorn sighting. I can't think of another instance of it. If you know of one, please tell me. And because the Mills Brothers really didn't have an act, they were just singers. And because all they did was sing, it meant that they didn't have to play porters or doormen or anything like that. They just came on to the mic and sang the song and were wonderful. And so it's one of my favorite moments in movie musical history, and I love movie musicals. And in the bargain, Dick Powell was from Arkansas. So I think it's a tribute to his humanity that he would, because he was the star of the movie. I'm sure if he had any qualms about it, he could have said, no, not doing this song. And he didn't. So that's my pitch about Dick Powell. And again, if you don't know from the Mills Brothers, they're worth knowing about. It's 11 o'clock.
Larry?
Yeah.
Good till 11:30, Larry. 11:30 is your target.
Well, I just don't know if anybody, needs to express themselves.
Yeah, I have a couple of comments, if you don't
Please.
mind.
I don't see you, so go.
Okay, I'll make myself visible. Here I am. I'm Elba
Hello, Ms.
Swafford.
Swafford.
Back to your comment about the light-skinned female and the dark-skinned males.
Mm-hmm.
I think that probably is an intent to continue the racism that occurred then and now, in that white people felt that Black men were only interested in white women. Therefore, they would have them on screen with light-skinned women. And so that would certainly continue that pervasive thing when it showed in Black neighborhoods, because of course it would not show in the white theater. And to this day, you will find a lot of very light-skinned actresses and dark-skinned actors on the screen. And I wonder if that is just a subliminal continuous thought that only light-skinned women who are closer to white women are superior and can do this type of craft well. It was only recently when Viola Davis had a leading role, in my mind, that where she was a sexy woman, a knowledgeable woman, that it was in our faces in television that a dark-skinned woman could command the screen and could be sexy and wonderful and loving and have that star power without having the light skin associated with her. That's that comment from me.
Well, let me sneak in an amen and now continue.
You asked about when Sammy Davis was a child star along the same time that Shirley Temple. Why didn't we have more Black stars coming to the forefront? That has always been the white man's way of squashing talent, whether it is in the theater or in industry or medicine or whatever. They will never showcase Black talent unless they are forced to. And there was no force to have Black singers and actresses and actors be put out there. It was not a money-making thing for them. We were not their road to the moneyed success. And so until you had or have the white producers taking under their wings these talented people, even until 2024, doing their job without these people trying to change their work, you will still see a dearth of Black talent. Those are my 2 comments.
And again, I say amen. Anyone else?
Larry, I'd like to say something.
Ma'am?
I'm Priyanka. I work at Pasadena Village. I kind of wanted to add to Melba's first point about the light-skinned women and the darker-skinned men in movies and stuff, because I'm Indian, so that colorism is really like pervasive all around the world. And you have in like Hindi movies from the 30s onwards, you have light-skinned women and darker men in those roles too. And they were really trying to like emulate, like it all goes back to like colonialism in India. And even now, if you watch movies or you listen to the music, when you're referring to like a beautiful woman, she'll be referred to as lighter skinned or white or any of those words in Hindi. So it really is all around the world, or anywhere where colonialism had an effect, you'll hear about how especially for women, how if they're lighter skinned, they're so much more beautiful, and all of this stuff. And like even in my own family, like my mom and I are the darker ones in the family, and everybody would worry about how we will find matches and stuff like that when we get married. So it's still pervasive culturally today in India and parts of Asia and stuff. So the effects of colonialism are very far reaching. So I just wanted to,
I did not know that was true in the Indian culture.
Yeah.
That's both fascinating and really saddening.
It's sad, yeah, exactly.
As I've mentioned, I'm Louisiana Creole, and no one on earth is more color conscious than Louisiana Creoles. And I'm the first of 4 children in my family, and I mentioned this in my book, that I grew up with especially older Black people constantly referring to one of my brothers as the pretty one, and he is light-skinned and hazel-eyed. And so that was just part of my upbringing. It was understood that the lighter you were, the prettier you were, even for a male.
Absolutely, absolutely. And for my mom, she has two sisters, an older and younger. They were both lighter skinned, so they were the pretty ones. And my mom was the smart one. So she was never the pretty. I think she's the prettiest one. I also think you are the prettiest one, having not seen your family as much. But I feel like it's just these effects are so they're still affecting us to this day, right? Even if you read newspapers and like Hindi and stuff, there'll be like ads, like marriage ads, matchmaking ads, and one of the requirements will be like wanted, girl, fair skinned or lighter skinned, or they're really hilarious to read, but they're also very sad.
I keep hoping that the generations after mine would be subject to less of this crap, and apparently it just isn't the case, which is saddening.
It's slow, yeah, slow and steady. It's slow and steady, but like my mom doesn't tolerate it. I imagine you don't tolerate it either, but we're trying to change it, one lecture at a time. So thank you.
Larry, if you don't have more slides that you want to show, you might stop sharing and we can see people as they speak.
No, actually, I'm not finished. I just wanted to see if anybody had things to say.
Oh, okay.
And clearly
All right.
they have, which is nice. While we're sitting here, does anybody have any, just off the top of your head, gut reactions? There's the slide, there's the title, there's the Gone with the Wind. Anybody, go.
I don't have anything about that, Larry, but you might take a few minutes and explain what Creole means. I don't know that everybody would understand what Creole
I actually
means.
thought I said that earlier, but it's possible I missed it. My family is of Black African, Native American, and French ancestry. And that's what most Louisiana Creoles are, some mix of those things. And I'm sorry that I took for granted that you'd know that.
Well, Creole has I'm from Louisiana, so I understand a little bit about what Creoles are and were in the past in the South, and the Creole experience in New Orleans, which I don't know that everybody would be familiar with that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, my parents were not from New Orleans. They were from Nowheresville. So I imagine New Orleans, I mean, from what I hear about New Orleans is almost a universe unto itself. My parents were from rural Louisiana, but
well, yeah, New Orleans was kind of a world to itself, but it also was a big influence on South Louisiana too. So I mean, the influence spread. But the Creoles were a particularly important group of people in New Orleans culture and history.
So,
and until the Americans took over Louisiana, it was a different society in New Orleans.
Was somebody saying something?
Oh, Mouthy Melba, I have a comment on your Gone with the Wind slide.
Hit it.
That to me, having seen the movie also, it seems to me that it's talking about a time that is now past, where the white women were so revered, I should say, and even people like Rhett have decided that time was to be no more, so it's gone, and we can move on.
That's an interesting take on it.
Mm-hmm.
The reason why I include this movie, knowing that it can be triggering for certain people, are 2 reasons. I actually like it. And in my book, I half jokingly apologize to all Black people everywhere for the fact that I like this movie. As I say, it's racist, it's rapey, and I know it, but I enjoy it. for well, aside from the fact that it's terribly well made and it's well acted and it's one of the best made movies, I think, of that time. But I like Scarlett O'Hara. Obviously she's an enslaver, and I should hate her on that score alone. But I also admire her gumption. I have to respect anybody who will get up out of the mud and say, as God is my witness, this isn't going to lick me. So I like that character, and I like that performance. And of course, Hattie McDaniel. I stand by this. I think everyone, especially Black people, should put themselves through Gone with the Wind at least one time, because Hattie McDaniel won the Oscar for this. She was the first. It was 1940. It was a long time until another Black person would win the Oscar, and we need to put some respect on her name. I think it's very much an Oscar caliber performance. I think she rises above the role that she plays, and I just think she's brilliant in it. And here she is.
Miss Dolly, where are you going without your showing the night air fixture set in? And how come you didn't ask them gentlemen to stay for supper? You ain't got no more manners than a steel hand. That's the business of the domination. Come on in the house. Come on in before you catch your devil dancer. No, I'm going to wait for us. Come home from the Webster. Come on in here. Come on.
I mean, granting that she was playing a role, I can't imagine any Black person who doesn't know someone like her. She reminds me of my mother. She reminds me of my paternal grandmother. And it's rumored that Hattie McDaniel and Clark Gable, who played Rhett Butler, were friends. It's also rumored that when Hattie McDaniel was forbidden to attend the grand opening of Gone with the Wind, which was held in Atlanta, Georgia. She was not allowed to go. And it is said that Clark Gable threatened to boycott that grand opening, that premiere, and that Hattie McDaniel talked him out of it. I have found no good provenance for that story, though I do know that Lenny Blewett, who I've mentioned at least twice already, who was a bit actor in Gone with the Wind, he said that Clark Gable saw to it that the porta potties that were used on set were not white and colored. He demanded that those signs be taken down. So I have to give Clark Gable the snaps for that. I'm not one for Gee What If, but one of my favorite Gee What Ifs is, what if Clark Gable had in fact gone to the airport hand in hand with Hattie McDaniel and said, I'm not going unless she goes. But of course, that's not what happened. What happened was that Hattie McDaniel was in, sorry, I'm about ready to get rid of this now. No, I can't. Hattie McDaniel was in a segregated area in the restaurant where they had the Oscars. And this was in Los Angeles. This was at the Ambassador in Los Angeles. Now I can't unsave. Give me a moment, please.
Helene, did you have something to share about Gone with the Wind? I thought I saw you.
I thought I saw her too. Nothing.
I don't know that Helene is still with us here.
Huh? That's all right.
I think Helene is gone. I don't see Helene on the list here anymore.
You're right. I think she probably had to go at 11.
That's cool. I'm actually about about done. I can't seem to unshare now because
Well, if you're
Zoom
ready
has
to,
officially kicked my butt. So
if you're ready to unshare, I can take the share down, I think.
give it a shot.
Okay. There we go. All right, you're back on.
Cool. Anybody, anything?
Yeah, I believe the echo's coming from Kevin. Okay, that's better. This is Will. I'm up in Portland, Oregon. This was an amazing show for a lot of reasons. The stuff that you brought out were things that I knew nothing about, and that's some things I did. But one thing is a theme throughout this is who belongs and who doesn't belong, who's in and who's out. And the fascinating thing for me about Hollywood or entertainment in general is it has traditionally been a refuge for people who are out. In Hollywood, it was Catholics and Jews and gays, for that matter. Many actors and actresses, of course, were gay, who found some sort of a home. And some of the names of the people who took chances on Black people were Jewish, and they were definitely fellow people who felt outcast, helping other people who felt outcast. There's all these layers, but the whole business, and as a Southerner, I'm from North Carolina, of breeding and blood, family, and who you are biologically was hugely important, regardless of whether it's black and white. And that attitude that, hey, blood is not on the surface, is not blood underneath, has been changing. But what you brought out, of course, is some changes, such as President Obama or Will Smith being the highest paid actor in Hollywood, are exceptions to a continuing belief that certain people belong and certain people don't. And as a group like this, we are constantly dealing with that assumption and countering it as much as possible and recognizing that it's hogwash. And look at what we missed because of it. The beauty of the acting is incredible. And that's Sammy Davis Jr. And here he is, this little kid. That sort of misuse of hierarchy is tragic in one sense, that so many people didn't get the recognition they did. The things that have come now in Hollywood, the economic differences are minimized greatly. There are people like Shonda Rhimes and DuVernay who are producing magnificent entertainment. And Black entertainment, BET. I was watching that in a hospital room where my friend I was visiting was white. He was watching BET. It was all black cast, interesting stuff. And this is something that we can build on. And the things that you're doing is absolutely, your background is fascinating. I go, wow, this is cool. But I want to get a sense of the layers and how many other areas of that same sort of invidious discrimination takes place that we can recognize and counter and try not to practice. Thank you.
There is something else for you to check out, Will. There is a new company called Onyx. It is, yes, it's a subsidiary of Disney. And it will be devoted to Black programming, Black actors, actresses, writers, producers, and so forth. So when I think I'll have to look to see what they may have on the air coming up. But that is something that will help Black actresses and actors to get their due on the great stage. It'll be a streaming system.
That sounds cool. The other part is places where
one of these,
they are. Yeah.
What? I didn't. You had a question, Larry?
No, I said you should be doing one of these presentations.
Yeah.
No,
Melba has
You
been
sure
one of
do.
our speakers in the past talking about her career.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, so she's definitely on, and her recording is up on our YouTube channel, so you can go see her
Excellent.
presentation.
Well,
Melba is an anesthesiologist in Houston,
And I'm
and
also a momager.
yeah, a momager, right?
My
Momager.
daughter's a writer in Hollywood.
Oh,
Right.
cool. Oh, there you go.
You might tell us a
What?
little bit about Erica. You know that I think people would be interested in what she's doing.
This is Larry's presentation.
Well, all right. Well, maybe you'll come back and do a presentation about Erica or something, or get her to do something. We could do that one way or the other. I'll get with you on that. We'll work something out.
All right. All right.
Okay.
And I wanted to make a comment about BET. Do you know who
Yeah.
owns BET?
I don't know.
Okay. It was sold as a result of a divorce, but a Black couple owned it, and it now belongs to, I believe, Paramount Global.
Oh, for goodness sakes. So
They,
they've gone.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, and I had to inform my teenage granddaughter that it's not Black owned anymore.
No, it's not. That's not. Well,
I
there's
didn't know
not
that.
Black owned. One of the other advances that can happen, and I think is happening some, is Black owned or people of color owned, where the leadership is people of color, but the casting and the production is broadly appealed and broadly staffed. I have one example. My hometown of Durham, North Carolina, had a guy named Phil Freelon, who was an architect. His firm was the lead architect firm for the African American History Museum in DC, for example. And his architectural firm, he of course is Black. The picture of the partners and the people is multicolored. There are all kinds of people in that firm. And one particular thing I have a piece of personal history that relates to this. My father owned a house, 702 Cobb Street in Durham, a nice big house appropriate for a prominent lawyer and so on at the time in the 30s, 20s when he had it built. That house was owned by Phil Freelon in the 2000s. A Black architect, a prominent house of a prominent person, and the name of the house, it's a Durham historical thing, is the Fuller Freelon House. And that kind of connection is something that really resonates.
All right, Larry. So you want any wrap up comments you want to make? We're getting close to the end here now.
no, I've done mine. I hope I haven't bored anyone to tears. I hope I've taught somebody something. And I have been schooled myself today, so that's always good. I like to learn something every day, and I have from you all. So again, thank you, Katie, for suggesting me, and thank you, Dick, for having me. And yeah, I'm done. Y'all have a good day.
Thank you,
Well,
Larry. That was so
Thank you, Larry.
insightful.
this has been wonderful. Everybody, look, we got a couple of new presentations coming up. We've got Ricky Pickens coming up to talk about interrupting gang violence on the third Friday. And then Helene Reingold in March is doing her presentation, which really is an extension of Black History Month because we're dealing with another subject that will be of great interest to people. So we look forward to seeing everybody. Thanks everybody for coming. This is recorded and we'll get it posted up on our YouTube channel sometime next week. So you can look for it there. And I'll be sending out an email when it goes up. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Dick. Another great one.
Thank
Good job,
you.
Larry.
Bye, everyone.